Namaste Dosto! My name is Reiko, welcome to Desified Dish. I'm so very excited to finally be sharing this channel with you all. So I'm an Aussie based in Magnificent Melbourne, and I discovered a passion for cooking, and combined with a Desi heart, I've been exploring all the wonderful dishes that the Indian subcontinent has to offer. So please join me on this journey and let's eat some delicious food. So I wanted my first video to be something special, and what's more special than the chaotic enjoyment that is Holi. Also known as the Festival of Colours, it celebrates the love of Radha and Krishna as well as the triumph of good over evil. So, Happy Holi! But let's get down to today's dishes. So I wanted to pick a couple of things that are basically synonymous with Holi, things that you can't do without. So I've decided to make Gujiya, which is a fried dumpling filled with nuts, and Thandai, which is a spiced milk drink. Now I haven't actually had the opportunity to try either of these things, even though I've been to a couple of Holi events in the past. So I'm really excited to give them a go. So first things first though, let's get into those ingredients. Alright, so because the Thandai is best enjoyed when it's had a chance for the flavors to develop, we're going to make that first. So there are two main parts to the recipe. There's the Thandai paste, and then there's the actual Thandai proper. So for the paste, we're going to need about 35 to 40 blanched almonds. So we're going to need to take the skin off these guys. We'll get to that shortly. 20 black peppercorns. Give it a bit of heat. 4 teaspoons of fennel seeds, which we'll cool it down. 4 teaspoons of poppy seeds. So I've got white poppy seeds here. 2 tablespoons of watermelon seeds. Now you've probably noticed that this really doesn't look like a watermelon seed. Unfortunately, I could not find them in any of the stores that I looked in, so I'm subbing pepitas or pumpkin seeds. Hopefully it should work out. And about 15 to 20 green cardamom pods. So I really like cardamom, so I'll put all 20 in. So that's it for the paste. Then for the Thandai proper, we're going to need 1 litre of whole milk, wouldn't be much of a milk drink without it. Half a cup of sugar, so I'm using raw sugar here. A decent pinch of saffron strands. 2 to 3 tablespoons of rose water, so it's going to be very rosy. And these are of course completely optional because these are just to garnish. I'm also going to be putting on the top some dried rose petals. And I'll crush up some pistachios. And I might also put a few saffron strands on the top as well. Alright, so that's it for the ingredients. Let's go ahead and cue the music and get into it.
Alright, so I just need to set my kettle to 80 degrees because I'll need some hot water for blanching our almonds. Alright, so I'm going to take a trivet and a medium-sized bowl and then add my 40 almonds to it. And then to that, I'm going to pour my very hot water. And then I'm going to leave this for 15 minutes, and by then the skin should be nice and easy to get off. While we're waiting for the blanching, I'm going to take my processor jar, add 4 teaspoons of fennel seeds, 4 teaspoons of white poppy seeds, 20 green cardamom pods, 20 black peppercorns, and lastly 2 tablespoons of pepitas. Alright, so it's been 15 minutes, and as you can see my water here is very almondy. So to remove the skin, you just need to grab the almond at one end and just squeeze it, and it should pop right out of its shell. Now we have 40 naked almonds. Okay, so I'm then going to add the lid to my processor, and we're going to grind this into a fine paste. And the mixture didn't quite come together, so I'm just going to add about half a tablespoon of milk just to make sure that it's completely ground. Alright, and with that, the paste is ready. Next, I'm going to take a microwave-safe bowl and add 3 tablespoons of milk to it, and then heat this up in the microwave for about 20 seconds because we're going to use this to bloom our saffron. Then I'm going to take a generous pinch of saffron strands in my little mortar and pestle and grind those up real nice. Then I'm going to simply add them into my milk and leave it for about 10 minutes, and by that time we'll get a nice yellow color. Alright, and over to my hot plate, I'm going to add my heavy bottomed pan, and I'm going to add in 1 litre of full cream milk, and then I'm going to set the heat to medium. And we just want to make sure that we're stirring it constantly because we don't want to scald the milk. We only need to get this to a light boil, so nothing too crazy. Alright, that's up to temperature now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat to low and then add in my Thandai paste. Then using a whisk, I'm going to give this a good mix around just to make sure it's all nicely incorporated. And now for the sweet stuff. I'll add in half a cup of raw sugar, and then again I'm just going to mix this around until the sugar is all dissolved. Alright, now that my sugar is well and truly combined with the milk, I'm going to go ahead and add in my saffron mixture, turn off the heat, and then I'm going to give this a bit of a mix and then leave it sit for 30 minutes. This will allow the flavors to infuse. Alright, it's been half an hour, and as you can see, the milk is now beautifully thick with flavor. So we're going to go ahead and add our rose water, in this case 3 tablespoons, and then we're going to let that sit for another hour. Again, just to let it all infuse together, and then it will be ready for bottling. Alright, so I've set up my pitcher with a strainer, and I'm going to use a ladle to carefully pour the mixture in. Now there will be a lot of sediment in this, so you've just got to do this very carefully, and every now and again you'll need to remove the sediment from the strainer because it will get a little bit clogged up with all of that flavory goodness. I'm also going to use a spoon to press down the sediment so I get all of the milk out of it. And there we have it, bottled golden Thandai. So I'm just going to add the lid on, and then I'm going to put this in the fridge. And you probably want to leave it for at least 3 hours, but preferably, if you can, leave it overnight because those flavors will further develop in the fridge. Look at all that collected sediment. I really don't want to waste this, so if anyone's got any ideas of what I can do with it, please let me know in the comments.
Alright, so now on to the Gujiya. So this again is also going to be in 2 parts. We've got the dough and then the filling. So for the dough, we're going to need 1 cup of all-purpose flour, or maida if you will. This is going to make about 10 Gujiya. I'm making a small recipe because I'm also planning to make something for Easter pretty soon, so I don't want to have too many left over. 2 tablespoons of ghee. So this is my homemade ghee, but of course you can use store-bought, nothing wrong with that. So that's for the dough. Then for the filling, we're also going to need about half a tablespoon of ghee. Hopefully I've got enough here, but I do have some extra if I need it. Now I'm not going to put them in, but generally the recipe would also have raisins. Usually I think about 1 tablespoon or so. To be honest, I'm not much of a fan, so I'm not going to put those in, but if you want to, go right ahead. But it does have nuts, so I'm going to use a combo of almonds, cashews, and pistachios. So I'm going to go to probably 2.5 tablespoons of nuts, and I'm going to chop them very finely because we don't want too many chunky bits. 1/6 of a cup of desiccated coconut, about half a tablespoon of milk, and this is only because we're going to be using frozen moa or koya. If you're using fresh, if you can be bothered to make it, it would take a really long time. You probably wouldn't need the milk. It's mainly just because it is going to be a bit dry because it's frozen. We're going to need 3/4 of a cup, so roughly about 90 grams or so. So it's going to be potentially quite a lot of this. 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom powder, and a combo of ghee and oil for the cooking. So normally you would deep fry these. I'm actually going to do this in the air fryer, so it's a little less messy and the cleanup's not quite as long, especially because I've already used the same pot I would normally deep fry in for the Thandai. So let's get to it.
So onto my trivet, I'm going to add my trusty bread bowl, which is actually a laundry bucket, but it works perfectly. And I'm going to add 1 cup of maida or all-purpose flour. Next, I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of ghee in a small bowl and microwave it on the melt butter setting, and then add this into my flour. Now to get my hands dirty. So I'm going to get in there and mix the ghee into the flour. until that's nicely combined. And then I'm going to start adding water, and we just want to add a little bit at a time because we're looking for a pretty stiff dough here. We're not trying to get sort of roti style dough. Alright, that dough's come together nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this with a damp towel, and we're going to leave it for about 45 minutes to rest. Next, I'm going to take my cutting board and a knife and then measure out 3 tablespoons of nuts. So 1 of pistachios, 1 of cashews, and 1 of almonds, and then cut these finely. Now that is finely chopped. Alright, now back over to the hot plates. I'm going to add my saute pan, and I'm going to set this to medium heat. Now that the pan is hot, I'm going to add in half a tablespoon of ghee. Let this melt, and then add in my mixed nuts, and I'm going to just saute these until they get a nice color and are fragrant. Looking good, so now we're going to quickly take them off the heat and put them in a bowl because we don't want to burn the nuts. Alright, and into the same pan I'm going to add 1/6 of a cup of desiccated coconut, and with this I'm just going to lightly roast it, so we just want a slightly golden color, nothing too much. Alright, now I'm going to get the coconut out of the hot pan and into my waiting bowl. So now reduce the heat to low, and I'm going to add my khoya. So I grated this from frozen so it melts nice and evenly. So we're just going to keep moving it around until it gets nicely golden and a little bit dry. Now we're going to add this into our food processor along with half a tablespoon of milk because it is a little bit dry. This wouldn't be necessary if you were using fresh khoya. Alright, that consistency is perfect. Next, into my mixing bowl, I'm going to add my khoya, followed by 1/4 of a cup of caster sugar and the nuts and coconut from earlier. And lastly, 1/4 of a teaspoon of cardamom powder, and now this is ready to mix. So I started out using my spatula, but I recognized pretty quickly that really my hands were going to do a better job in this case. So I'm mostly just sort of using a squishing motion just to combine the marble with all of the nuts so it's all nicely combined and stuck together. Alright, and that's the filling all ready to go. Now I'm going to take a small bowl and add 1 tablespoon of flour and 2 tablespoons of water and then mix this together. We're going to use this slurry to seal the gujiya together. Alright, it's time to take my dough out from its little slumber, so I'm just going to take it onto my breadboard, and I'm going to just roll it into a bit of a log to start with, and then cut this in half, and then cut it again into 5 pieces, so we end up with 10 little dough balls. So you shouldn't need to use any dusting flour for this. Due to the high ghee content in the dough, it won't stick at all. Just make sure that you are keeping the dough covered at all times while you're not using it, just because it does have a tendency to dry out, as I discovered later. Alright, let's get rolling. So I'm going to take one of my dough balls, and using the palm of my hand, I'm just going to squish it down into a disc and then put it on my breadboard, and using my rolling pin, I'm going to roll it out to a 12.5 centimeter round. Alright, as you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to roll this out into a round. This is due to the dough being a little bit dry, so I probably should have rehydrated the dough or worked a little bit quicker than I did. So that's a bit of a note for next time. It may not be perfect, but it should do the job all the same. Alright, now I'm going to dip my finger in the slurry I made earlier and just run it around the edges of my sort of round. This is going to act as a glue to bind the edges of the gujiya together once we've filled it. Now I'm going to take about a tablespoon of my filling and then add it into the dough. So we want to make sure that it's sort of sitting on one side because we're going to be folding this over, but we also need to make sure we leave enough space around the edge to be able to seal it. Now I'm just going to take one side and fold it over onto the other, and then carefully using my fingers I'm just going to seal around the edges, just light touches. I also used a knife just to chop off a little bit of the excess around the edges because I found that there was a little bit too much. Now I'm just going to use a fork to seal the edges and also make it a little bit pretty. And there's our first one done. It might not be perfect, but still looks pretty good to me. I'm going to put this back in the bucket to keep it dry and then repeat with the remaining gujiya till I have them all done. Alright, now I'm going to take a brush and liberally apply a mix of oil and ghee onto each gujiya. This is going to help them crisp up in our air fryer. Alright, so you only want to prepare as many as will actually fit in your air fryer at once. So I can only fit about 3 to 4 of the Gujiya in there because we don't want to overcrowd. We want to make sure that there's a little bit of space to make sure that they cook evenly. And we don't want them to dry out, so I'm only going to do 3 to 4 at a time. If you haven't, please do turn on your air fryer to 180 degrees because we want this to be preheated. Mine took about 5 minutes to get to this temperature. Alright, so I'm going to add them into my air fryer basket and then cook them for 14 to 16 minutes, turning once. So after about 7 minutes, we want to give them a bit of a switcheroo. And let's have a look. Oh, looks pretty good to me. Perfectly golden. Alright, I'm going to continue cooking the rest of these. Alright, so this next step is completely optional, but I also made some sugar syrup to coat the Gujiya in. So this is half a cup of water mixed with half a cup of sugar and then heated on medium heat until it gets to the required 1 string consistency. Or if you have a thermometer, you can just check it at 110 degrees Celsius. That's also perfect. Now that it's ready, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. Just give it a bit of a swirl around. And then I'm going to start using a pair of tongs to coat my Gujiya. So I'm just going to add them into the pan, give them a turn around, and then put them onto a piece of baking paper so they don't get too stuck. Then of course just repeat this process with the remaining Gujiya, and once they've cooled down you can add them into an airtight container. They are really good when they're fresh and hot though, so do eat one right now. I highly recommend it. Alright, and now it's time for my favorite part, the plating. Sit back and enjoy. So I'm just adding some chopped pistachios to decorate. Now for the Thandai, which has spent a whole night in the fridge, so you know it's going to have a nice strong flavour. And I'm going to serve it in these little kulhat that I got from an Indian designer brand called Chumbak, and they're just beautiful. To decorate, I'm going to add a few saffron strands, as well as some rose petals. So these are dried rose petals. And also a few pistachio crumbs as well.
Alright, we're back. It's been a whole day. Finally ready to present this to you because I wanted to make sure that the Thandai had time for the flavors to develop. So, I have Gujiya and Thandai. And just a little bit of note with the Thandai. There is one ingredient that would be missing if this was made in India. It's quite common for bhang to also be included, which is cannabis. So you would get a little bit high drinking this, but obviously not for me. So let's have a bit of a closer look. So we'll look at the Gujiya first. You can smell that sort of pastry smell. So I'm getting the sort of ghee and sort of bready sort of smell from it, as well as I can smell the sugar syrup on the outside, and I can smell slightly the nuts that are encased within. So just as a little bit of observation, one of the problems that I did have during when I made this is that I probably left the dough a little bit too long when I was making the filling, and so it did dry out a little bit. I probably should have tried to rehydrate the dough in a sense. So it is a little bit drier than it probably should have, but I'm hoping texture might not be great, but I'm hoping the flavor is still going to taste very good. So we'll have a look at that. And then over to the Thandai. It looks very pretty. Hopefully it also tastes very good, but let's give it a smell. Oh, this smells divine. You're getting the milk, you're getting that rose water, the saffron. I can smell just how thick with spice it is. I'm sure this is going to taste amazing, and it's so like nicely chilled. It's actually quite a warm day today, so I'm sure this is going to taste amazing. All right, time for tasting. So I'm going to start with the Gujiya. Oh, beautiful. Sweet, nutty. Like I said, the only really downside is that the texture isn't quite right. Let's move over to the Thandai. Oh, that is amazing. This is definitely the highlight for my Holi cooking. Oh, it's so rich. Oh, I can see why you wouldn't normally drink too much of this. All right, that's it for this video. If you like what you saw, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to support me on this little journey that I'm going on. And thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.